Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome back to another episode of Saturday Horror Movie Reviews. This time I'm joined by Steve from the YouTube channel Polterguy Steve. And we are going to be talking the 2022 movie Halloween Ends.
Yay!
I was gonna say, you can tell by your face you're like so excited.
I'm very excited. Yeah, you could see my Michael Myers back there.
I see him.
I'm ready to go. But thank you. It's been too long. I am so happy to do this with you.
Oh my God, me too. And yeah, I like, yeah, we have so much fun when we're on camera, when we're talking together. So really glad and of all the ones to like get together on, this one's going to be funny, I think. So
Oh yeah.
I can't wait.
It may be a little controversial. I know the conversation out there has been a little interesting.
God, I know, like scary weather outside for like people. This has been, I think the one thing that I have noted just in general, it's a very generic way of looking at it, but this is a very divisive film. Like, and that doesn't always happen in the horror community. Like, I think you always have people who don't like stuff, right? But I think
Right.
this one is like really got people on like both sides.
Yeah. Because you know what? It's like the slasher, right? I mean, sure. I mean, there might have been a slasher or two that came before, right? I mean, there's that joke in Scream 4 about Peeping Tom. And so whether, you agree that Halloween started the craze or not, I think it, all intents and purposes, I think it did. So
Yeah.
people, this franchise holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts. So I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of feelings.
A lot of feelings. And then
Yeah.
what's really interesting is the people who are not super invested in how strong their feelings are too.
Right. I think that's the thing, right? I think a lot of people, especially with the internet, tend to jump on the bandwagon. And I'm like, have you really? Like,
Yeah.
do you care? Did you like drag your grandfather to Blockbuster Video when you were 9 years old and make him spend whatever he had in his wallet on the whole franchise so you could watch it 20 times? I mean, like,
Yeah.
are a lot of people really that invested? I wonder, but I don't want to gatekeep, but sometimes I wonder.
It is one of those things, though. You're right, because you're like, all of these Halloween fans are coming out of the woodwork. I'm like people that you follow, I'm like, or like just people you interact with. I'm like, I've never even heard you talk about Halloween.
Right. But they have a lot of opinions about it.
Yeah, they were like, what's really popular right now? This. So I'm gonna give my opinion.
Yeah. I think a lot of I mean, especially with a big movie like this, we have us in like, the horror circle talking about it nonstop.
Yeah. Yep.
And then, then it's this big box office movie. So a lot of people who maybe aren't talking about horror 24/7 are hopping in. So it muddies the waters a little bit. But
I agree. No, that's a fair statement. I totally agree.
Yeah.
So right now, as of this moment, Halloween Ends is sitting at a 5.1 out of 10 on IMDb. See, like dead center, like a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is probably the critics, not the user reviews. 47% on Metacritic and 58 on Google.
Okay.
It's at 57 audience score with 1,000 plus verified on Rotten Tomatoes. Okay. So this synopsis is long as hell, but I'm gonna rush through it because we already know, but I'm just gonna this is formality, right? 4 years after her last encounter with masked killer Michael Myers, Laurie Strode is living with her granddaughter and trying to finish her memoir. Myers hasn't been seen since, and Laurie finally decides to liberate herself from rage and fear and embrace life. However, when a young man stands accused of murdering a boy that he is babysitting, it ignites a cascade of violence and terror that forces Laurie to confront the evil she can't control.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It brings up a lot of feelings I had about the marketing.
Okay. I'm very curious, actually, about the marketing.
So the synopsis and the marketing, right? I think what led to a lot of the negative discourse is like this really was pushed as like round 3, no holds bar, like boom, 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 Laurie v. Michael, let's go, So the people who like didn't quite follow the behind the scenes stuff kind of like were expecting like that to just kind of be it.
Yeah.
Where like a lot of the stuff was like, I feel like Jamie Lee Curtis and John Carpenter even, everyone was like, this is a weird one, guys. Like, go in with like, an open mind. So it was just interesting. I think it was like, the people who were following it kind of knew it might be a little different. but like a lot of people maybe went in expecting one thing. They were expecting H2O. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Just kind
people
of balls to the wall, like, yeah.
right. They were expecting Final Showdown H2O
Yes.
2.0, and this was not that.
No.
You know, so I
Yeah.
think it comes down to like what they chose to be the synopsis, and then how they did the trailer. I think they kind of set themselves up for this kind of
Yeah, it kind of did them a disservice
yeah.
because not everyone is going to do those things like look into it or try to learn more about it, or they're going to look to the trailer and some people, like I know people who don't even watch trailers because they don't want to go into anything.
Mhm.
So like some people did actually get to go into it not with any expectations, but um yeah, I think yeah, that's an interesting point. The marketing on it was very very much a like I was like you would expect like 2 hours of them fighting. Like
Right, right.
she leaves and this is not a spoiler because this isn't what happens, but like, I was like thinking in my head probably what would happen is she'd leave the hospital, find her daughter dead, and it would be like on after that. And but yeah, no, that's a really good point about the marketing. So, okay, so if you had to rate this out of 10, what's your rating for this one?
I'm gonna give it like a 7.58.
7.58. Okay.
I'm gonna lean more on the 8. I think, yeah, I'm gonna lean on the 8. On
Okay.
the 8 side. Yeah.
Okay.
What about yourself?
So I have to say I watched it twice. I've seen it twice.
Mhm. Same.
The first time I watched it, I really was not happy. And then what I did, and I'm actually really think a lot of people should do this, especially if they haven't seen or don't really care for this one. But I also I think that I went back and rewatched Season of the Witch.
Mm.
And going back and rewatching Season of the Witch, I don't know how people's opinions couldn't be shifted a little because I think remembering that film and how it was and what it meant for the franchise and what it was like, not to mention all the nods to Season of the Witch that are in Halloween Ends, I think that that was something that really boosted my score.
Yeah.
And the longer I sit on it, the less I hate it, which I think is a testament to honestly the fact that it's a well-made movie because I'm still thinking about it, still trying to decide how I feel.
Yeah.
And so anyway, all of that to say, um, this is probably sitting now as a present day, probably sitting at like a maybe like a 5.5 or a 6 for me.
Okay. All right.
The
Like middle of
first
the
time
road.
I watched it, it was probably like a 3. I was really
I
mad.
don't think that is a solid difference.
I don't know. Tell me your like unspoiled things that like things you noticed, things you loved, if there's things you didn't
I
love.
mean, I just feel like without going into details, and we'll do that later on. But like, there was
Yeah.
beyond Season of the Witch. I mean, there are so many callbacks to
So
4, 5, 6. Like, it.
one.
I mean, I know, like going into 2018, Jamie Lee Curtis was saying like this was them really kind of like patching over the timeline and like not just like undoing stuff, but like tidying it up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you looked at Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills, I mean, you're assuming that they're really only tidying up Halloween 1 to that point. But with Ends, I mean, they're really taking a lot of story elements
Mm-hmm.
and kind of just perfecting them. I mean, they're really making them a little less muddy. They're kind of
Yeah.
making them just a little more realized,
Mm-hmm.
somewhat a little more simplistic, but I think in
Mm-hmm.
a streamlined way.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. But I really liked Corey as a character. A lot of people don't. I do. I thought he was very engaging. I felt a lot of what he was feeling. There was guilt and there was loneliness and there was this trapped feeling. I dug into the love story.
Yeah.
I don't because someone said to me like it felt very rushed, but I'm like, I don't really think they were like in love as much as like they were like, oh, I found this person and they're in a very similar situation as
They
I
get
am.
it.
They
Yeah.
got each other.
Yeah.
So I really dug that.
Yeah.
I liked seeing Lori in a healthier place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I liked the town itself seemed to be well. What was interesting? I remember there being controversy maybe last year. I think
Mhm.
David Gordon Green said they were considering involving the pandemic in some way.
Oh,
Um, and I think thematically they did, but literally they did not. Right? Like
yeah,
I think it's in like they didn't mention anything, but
right.
you can feel the town. Like Michael was kind of the metaphor here
Mhm.
for the pandemic in a sense. Like it was like,
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah.
like 4 years. We're getting over this trauma as a community. It's affected people in different ways.
Never thought about that.
People are feeling
Huh.
isolated. People are
Okay.
maybe not as into Halloween. People aren't great because you think like no one was trick or treating actually
Well, and
in real
everybody's
life.
joy is missing in general because
Right.
everyone is having to adjust to this new normal, which works for the murdering aspect and the pandemic. So now that you say that, that's actually crystal clear, but I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, because you think about like, and people are blaming Lori, right? There's a lot of that in there. But yeah, I just liked where they took the characters, where they took the town, where they took the story. Yeah, maybe some of my negatives would have been like some of the like the in between kills and ends explanation stuff.
Yeah.
Like especially with regards to Michael
Hmm.
specifically. um like a lot of here's the thing is like you don't have to spoon feed me everything,
Sure.
but put in some threads of an understanding,
Yeah.
which apparently the novelization, people are raving about it. I don't know if you've been following any of the stuff, but
Mhm.
the novel that's based on the movie apparently brings up Loomis, brings up a lot of
Of ends or
and the ends novelization fills in a lot. It's supposed to take the story and
interesting.
really expand, which makes me wonder is like what's in the extended cut? Because I know we got an extended kills. I feel like there's going to be an
Yeah.
extended
I
cut of
bet
this.
you're right.
Because there's a lot. Because what happens with novelizations, and I don't know if it happened for this movie, but typically, this is my understanding, is that whoever's writing the novel gets the unedited script, gets the full movie before. So that whoever's writing the book is
Oh.
working off of the script, and then the
Huh.
editor who's making the movie makes the cuts. So there's going to be differences between the
Sure.
movie and the book, but the book is a full snapshot of what's in the script. So,
Interesting.
which makes me believe that there's probably going to be a lot of stuff because like there's references to like what's in Laurie's memoir. Laurie
Mhm.
talks about Loomis. Laurie talks about like how he helped her between the first movie and 2018.
Mhm.
Like it really fills in a lot. So I kind of really want to read the book now.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I don't know anything about the novelization of films. Like I've never it's not
I've only
something
read
that like I
one
know.
and it's
Huh?
Poltergeist.
Oh, shocker.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And the book that's Amityville Horror is based on it. So it's technically not a novelization, but I've read
but it's this yeah,
the book and then
yeah,
which became the movie.
right.
But yeah, yeah, I think just that's my general non-spoiler. I kind of went on a tangent there, but that's
No, that's okay.
uh,
No, it's good. I it's no, it's that's the it's always good having conversations with people who like care about what they're talking about. So yeah, no, I so my general thoughts are, I've said this multiple times and I still feel this way.
mhm,
I think there was a lot of ideas in this film. There's a lot of concepts in this. This is not a linear, easy story by any stretch of the imagination,
yeah.
which I think you touched on earlier. So the thing is that every time they went in a direction I loved, they cut me off. And I was like, like it kept happening.
Yeah.
And every time it happened, I grew more and more angry about it. And then, so I think the atmosphere is very different, but I think that it's intentionally different. This was not an attempt to make you feel like you're watching a Halloween movie and then it ends up not feeling like a Halloween movie. That was never the intention. So the atmosphere is not Halloween. but I think that's on purpose. I don't think that was like an accident.
Yeah.
I agree that the lack of information between the two, especially considering it's been 4 years, was a little off-putting. First of all, I think the opening is amazing. The opening had me gutted. I
Oh
was like,
man.
"Holy cow!" I love
If
the
that was like an
opening.
anthology opening, if this was just
It
a complete,
was.
you know what I mean? Like if that was just that story and like, oh man.
And I loved, and so here's, and I will say this, I also really liked Corey. I think there was a big jump in Allison from kills to ends that I'm not a big fan of. I feel like she was almost somebody totally different. And while I understand there is this healing taking place, there's all these things that have happened. I just was hoping she was going to have a little more bite to her
Yeah.
than this like almost background character, and I didn't like that. I wish that I felt like she had been more like, I don't know, because she's there, she's on camera a lot, she's a big part of the story,
Yeah.
but like what she brought to that, I felt like wasn't the same as what she brought to kills. And
Yeah.
so like I was like, ugh. And also, and I don't know this, I'm gonna be honest, there's some things about this that I don't know if I like or hate them yet.
That's fair. This movie's
So
still very new. I
it's
mean, like,
very new, yeah.
you
And
still
I
have to
think,
digest the film for a while, right?
yeah, and I think, but this film isn't just a lot of references to Halloween movies. It's a lot of references to other horror movies.
True.
And some of one in particular, which we'll talk about when we get to spoilers, is very near and dear. So I was not sure if I liked it or not. So I go back and forth a lot. This film has me so confused and conflicted because there's so much about it. There were some really fantastic kills, the acting, the environment, the small town story, like all these things that I really liked. But I just felt like there was just something that made me feel like I didn't personally get this like closure I was hoping to get.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost left me feeling like I'm still waiting on the final movie to come out, if that makes sense. And so,
Yeah, maybe there should have been a Halloween Ends Part 1 and 2 kind of
yeah.
situation.
Well, and you almost could separate stories in this
Yeah.
film. You almost could make one Corey and Allison story and then a Lori and Michael story and have the town stuff in both. I mean, it could be, either
Yeah.
or. I think you could do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess let's jump into spoilers because I'm
Let's do it.
I know there's so much more to say, right?
Oh man, I am ready. I am raring to go.
Okay. So unspoiled. If you are watching this review and you have not seen it yet, it's still available in theaters and on Peacock.
Mhm.
Highly recommend watching it. Don't let us like ruin the experience because there is a lot to see in this film. So without further ado, let's spoil.
Okay. So I do feel like this movie could have benefited from being two movies because there is a lot there. But I
Yes.
will say, and I've seen a lot of people say this, I love that David Gordon Green gave us three very different movies. And I think that the showdown that was promised and ends, we kind of got in 2018, right? So kind of look at what the thesis is of these movies, right?
Mhm.
So you have the origin, right?
Mhm.
1978, the start of it all, Haddonfield's
Yep.
trauma, Laurie's trauma, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
Fast forward to 2018, it really is the showdown, right? Laurie's been planning this for 40 years.
Yep.
She finally got her chance.
Yep.
She technically bested him.
Yep. Yep.
So it was Laurie overcoming her trauma,
Mhm.
which she did as evidenced in Ends.
Yes.
So technically, I feel like that was the showdown that we were promised. Because now look at what Kills accomplishes. Kills is now moves away from Laurie's trauma and
Yeah.
focuses on Haddonfield's trauma.
Yep.
And it's the town. And and we get Super Michael in that movie. Right? Michael is unleashed and he's nuts. Like this is just like his like last hurrah. He is blowing through this town. People are losing their shit, like don't know what to do. But we have established some interesting things in Kills, right?
Yeah.
Michael is not interested in Laurie.
Nope.
They're the brother sister thing was undone in 18.
Mhm.
He's not interested in her. He wants to just go home. He is a shark on the move, fueled by evil. They introduced this like quasi supernatural transcendence thing,
Mhm.
which again, I appreciate that because
Mhm.
I do love 4, 5, 6. I actually really love the producer's cut of Curse of Michael Myers.
I
It's
haven't seen the
actually
producer's cut.
the producer's cut is so good, and it honestly is the best ending for Loomis, I think.
Oh dang!
That's a
Now
whole
I need
other that's a whole other conversation we can have.
to-
Because I think in the theatrical, it's implied that Michael kills him
Yeah,
because
it
Donald
is.
Pleasance does die in
Yeah.
real life. He has a much more sinister Twilight Zone ending in the producer's cut that I actually prefer. It's a little open ended,
Dang.
but I
Okay.
think it's the better ending. And in my head canon, that's how that timeline ends. Anyway,
Gotcha. In my head canon.
so in
Yeah.
Kills, we get a much simpler supernatural explanation. It's not a cult, it's not a whole family lineage. He's just evil, which is what Loomis has been saying for how many
This
years?
whole time. Yes.
Right. He's just the embodiment of evil. Boom. That's it.
Yep.
In the mythological sense. All right, now we get
Mhm.
to Ends. Now it's like 4 years later, we get this whole Whiplash thing.
Yeah.
What Ends does is it takes that Curse of Thorn trilogy and perfects it, right? So, oh my god, I screenshotted this tweet I saw. I was like, I have to bring this up when we talk.
Yeah.
I'll give them credit. They're at Dr. Wolfula, which which I like is fun. But I like so they tweet, I like the take on Michael Myers being a supernatural force held back by a human body. He ages, he loses an eye, it stays gone, his hand is shot, his fingers don't grow back. He's able to withstand a lot of pain and kills, but it brought consequences with it to the next movie. So, right, so that's the weakened state that he's in. Like he can only
Yes.
go so far. Right? How many
Yeah.
limbs is he gonna lose? How many eyes is he
Yeah.
gonna lose?
No, for sure.
So the evil needed somewhere to go, right? Hence our Corey, right?
Mhm.
And the evil. So because a lot of people I feel like are so latched onto Michael as a person, but Michael really isn't a character. I think you remember it's the mask, it's the visage, it's the movements, but that's evil, right? Michael died when he was 6 years old,
Yes.
right? Like Michael was taken over. And that Michael no longer exists, right? So he's just a figurehead for this mythological evil, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it may be. Is it Satan? Who I know it's just evil, right? So it's vague, but I think sometimes you want to stay vague because when you try too hard to explain it, it gets a little convoluted.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the evil had to go somewhere,
Yep.
and we've seen that. We saw that at the end of Halloween 4 with Jamie.
Jamie.
We saw that in Halloween 6 when they tried to pass it over to her baby.
Yep.
And the Strode boy.
Oh, yeah.
So we've had 3 candidates for evil in the last 40 years.
Sure.
So Corey is technically our 4th. So it's not a new concept. So I like that they took it and actually did a full arc story with it, right? And then it was almost you saw American Horror Story Coven, right?
Yes.
It's kind of like the Supreme.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You know what I
It's
mean?
good to be passed on, but it's like there's all these things that have to happen before it can be passed on.
Right.
Yeah.
But then and then at the end when Michael kills him, he's like, "Nope, I'm the Supreme." And then it's when we get the final battle, and then the evil is done. But I don't
Yeah.
know. Because I like 4, and I've recently been rewatching 4, 5, and 6.
Mhm.
I just appreciate the mythology. I think that they took it seriously and they didn't over convolute it, and you know and it's people are acting like it's this big disgrace to the franchise, but I'm like, have you been watching these movies for 40 years?
That's true. No, that's a good point. Well, and I think too, like one of the things that I struggle with, I think, and maybe this is actually more of a compliment than a complaint because it really is kind of like
Yeah.
when we get there's certain subgenres of horror that we put in these little boxes, right? And slashers are one of those things that we put in these little baby boxes and we have okay, these are our slashers. Here's the checklist of all the things that slashers can and can't be,
Right.
right? And what they are not allowed to be, quote unquote, per this box rule, is they're not allowed to be supernatural. Because the whole point of a slasher is that it's a real person. And I think what I've always struggled with this franchise, and I have and I enjoy this franchise. I don't have a single Halloween movie that I've hated. I don't have a single one that I hate. I have different levels of love for each one.
Yeah.
But I enjoy the franchise. I am not this like crazy Halloween movie person, right? Like I
Right.
like the franchise, I enjoy them, I like what it did for other things that came after that are very meaningful to me. Like I just, so I have a very affectionate relationship with this franchise. I
Yeah.
just am not like super committed to it. But one of the things that I struggle with is I have a hard time with the back and forth of this underlying, because for most of the franchise, not all of it, but for most of it, it's always or it's more subtle. So like in the beginning, in the beginning of the first two, we don't really get this like, oh, he's definitely like evil in this human form. Like we hear those things. Yes, they say he's evil. Loomis has his bit
Mhm.
about I looked into the eyes. Like we know all of these things, right? But it's still never like there's never this huge light on the fact that there's this questionable supernatural piece
Right.
to it. So whenever we've come to these markers where we've addressed this head on, that's when I get a little lost, because I struggle with the concept of a slasher being both things.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, and it's not really necessarily a thing that is like, I don't feel like, oh, it was done poorly, or oh, it doesn't make sense. It's just I struggle with it. But you also have to think too, it's like one of very like, well, especially from a bigger franchise like this, that's ever even combined two things like that. It's very unique to this storyline. So
Yeah.
I do struggle with that, because when those moments happen, I have to like really think on them, because my initial reaction is I don't like that. I don't like
Yeah.
that. I think it's dumb. I don't like it. Like when he's holding Corey and that moment happens, I'm like, ugh, and but then the other side of that, I say all that to say, listening to you talk about it and kind of thinking back to the other films, because the other ones, the only ones I watch on a regular basis is Season of the Witch and the first one. Those are the only two that I watch on a regular, like,
Yeah.
on and on and on. And so the others I've only seen a few times a piece. I don't revisit
Yeah.
them very often. And so hearing you talk about that, it does make a lot more sense to me now, listening to that and thinking about the fact that no, that's true. It is in other things. And then like in fact, it's been very big and prevalent in some of these other movies. And
Yeah.
I think you're getting these like newer Halloween fans that aren't super invested in the franchise, who don't know, or you have these people who do know Halloween on some level, but have forgotten what it like some of these other things too. And
Yeah.
so to your point, like I also have heard a lot of people being like, oh, it's like out of the blue. And it is and it isn't, because I think you talking about how many people it's attempted to be in before, it's like Corey was like a really viable candidate. Like he was someone that was alone. He was someone who had this like dark thing that happened. And like, and of course, we know as a viewer, it was an accident. Now, what would he have done if he'd gotten that door open and then got a hold of that kid? Who knows?
Right.
But that opening scene where he says, I'm gonna kill you, you little shit, and he kicks the door, and
Oof.
that baby's body, he's not a baby, but they're all
Yeah,
babies when
they're
you're,
babies. They mean
you
it's a
know.
kid. Yeah.
I was not prepared for that. Like my jaw, like like straight to the floor.
Yeah.
And that opening scene was just so like not anything I could have expected. Like you're not going into a Halloween film expecting the first kill to be something like that,
It was so gut-wrenching.
so gut wrenching. As he says this and this happens, the parents walk in on this moment. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to assume it was heavily edited. I don't really know. The effect of that body, though, oh my God. So well. Like I have goosebumps.
Yeah.
I have chills talking
Yeah.
about it. It was so upsetting. And and then that beautiful title card comes up with that blue and that font. And I was just like, like I was just like
Yeah.
and then it was like this for
It was
me.
a roller coaster ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, I think I think people should definitely be open-minded to talking about this film, because every time I talk to someone that loves it or really enjoyed it or even just liked it,
Mhm.
my opinion of it shifts a little, because I just am not thinking about these things. Like everybody watches things and absorbs them in different ways. And so
Yeah.
like I hadn't allowed myself to really embrace the supernatural part of it, because I just am like, no, it's like a slasher. Slashers can't be, like,
Yeah.
but anyway, I think that I don't know, that part still, I still would say is probably a weaker part of the story for me, because I just was like, I know, like, Michael took a beating. I know he's old. I know he's been through a lot. But I struggled with the stark differences between kills and ends, because I'm like, I get it. You can explain it 100 different ways to Sunday. I get why he's weak. I don't think it makes sense. Like, it really drove me crazy that he was that weak. When Corey goes in, just for example, and takes that mask, I was like, who the fuck does this kid think he is? He should be gutted, like dead,
Yeah.
And so, like, I struggled with some of these things, because I just, I know Michael is this like very specific thing, but to your
Yeah.
point, it's because I view him as a character and not a, not
Vehicle for evil.
yeah,
Because it's like as Michael's descending, Corey is ascending.
yeah,
I mean, because it's like because they're killing people kind of concurrently at the same time too, right? Like
yes,
I loved. I mean, because also the throwbacks to the clown costume, right? Corey's got his scarecrow, and
scarecrow mask.
I love when she turns and she sees him with the scarecrow like stabbing the doctor, and it was just so like the way Corey was like hunched over and
Was
just
just
going.
like,
He was so creepy. I thought that was very effective. Um, there was also the scene. I think you liked my tweet. It was kind of like that. It was very homoerotic, and I loved it when he brings the jerk, the cop to Michael,
yeah,
because like Corey's like holding him, and they're like laying down, and then Michael's like stabbing him. It looks like Corey's like kind of like really into it, like really enjoying it.
yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah.
this is a little. Oh wow, okay.
I retweeted this, and I'm very careful about my, like, what I do and don't say,
Oh,
especially as a female in content creating. But like, somebody shared this really great picture of him, the guy that plays Corey, not in the film, but just like another picture of him,
yeah.
And it was like, so let me get this straight. This is the guy that has the internet in the chokehold. And I was like,
It's all
yeah,
in the
you knew that was
attitude.
gonna
It's all
happen.
in the performance, I think.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I hadn't
I don't know.
really thought about that.
But like, yeah, that literal passing of the torch was kind of cool. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it's just, it is complicated, because like you're saying, it is very vague in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
But it's all because what John Carpenter does is it's there, but it's all subtext. It's all
Yes.
like
Right.
I always think about there's the conversation about fate in the classroom,
Mhm.
and that's a very supernatural heavy conversation. I mean, obviously the way Loomis talks about him, and
Yeah.
then I mean, Lori really kind of like I mean, yeah, she's not like the expert, but she kind of metaphorically gives us our answer at the end of Halloween. That was the boogeyman. I
Yeah.
mean, that's kind of like that is the
Yeah, just yeah.
metaphorically speaking, but that is our confirmation that he's supernatural. Plus, I'm like, and I'm so used to like what I find interesting with like the slasher supernatural thing is like because Freddy, that's supernatural. That's all
This is true.
supernatural. I
Yeah.
guess it really kind of depends on the slashers, right? I mean, we have like our prom night slashers, which are very like this is
Yeah.
a human. Scream, this is a human.
Mhm.
Or then
Well, and
you
I
have
think the other thing too with Freddy, though, is Freddy has always been supernatural. It was always
true,
in your face that he was
right? Oh,
supernatural.
that was like there was no question
There
about
was
it.
no question, and I
Yeah,
think, like, that is one of the, that's more of, like, it's just one of those, but you're right. Every subgenre of horror has subgenres within it, and
it's so true, and it
it's so
branches.
true. It's just this never ending I
Yeah,
know, like,
yeah.
um and like it's ever growing, it's ever changing. And I think that, like, what I can say is that even when I didn't really think that I really liked the film, or I wasn't really sure where I was going to fall in it, I can say that I really respect the effort that went into making this something different, because
Mhm.
that is something that we haven't seen and since 3, because 3 does not fall into, it's not a Michael Myers movie.
Right.
So I really appreciated that. You know what I really loved, and this says probably too much about me. I was really into the Bonnie and Clyde thing. Like, I was really into it.
I loved it.
I was so into it, and I was like, and I'm just like, oh my god, like I was like,
He's just
you're
like,
gonna
just
like
burn it down, and I'm like, yeah, do it.
And go off on his little motorbike and
And it
just like
literally,
take
I mean, he literally did burn the radio tower down.
well, that's true.
You know, like
But it was like that. Okay, and I don't know if like I may be alone in this, but you know that scene where they're on the roof, they're under the radio tower, and they're sitting together, and it's like all red, and you've got that like Lost Boys music playing in
yeah,
the background.
yeah.
I was like, where is this going? Expecting somebody to have some teeth. Like it was just one of those things. Like, I
Oh
totally
yeah,
got Lost Boys vibes from that, and I was just like,
totally.
my heart, like I couldn't, like I was there for it, and I didn't even. There were moments where I was reminded of how short of a time they knew each other, but I didn't care because that wasn't really the point of
Yeah.
like And I'm just like, I love their little like whatever that. Oh yeah,
How would you feel about Corey taking the mantle as the shape? Like it's
yeah.
like how would you feel? Like if Allison was the new Lori and Corey was the new Michael?
So I would want them both to be killers, honestly,
Mm.
but when he kills himself, well, we think he kills himself. I mean, technically, Michael's the one that kills him, but when he stabs himself, my heart broke. I was like, no, because I was
Yeah.
like, that was one of the things I wanted to happen that got cut. Because it was like, I wanted him to be the new whatever. I wanted that so badly. But I wanted him and Allison to take it away from Haddonfield
Oh
and
yeah.
just go like in a totally different direction, or whatever, because I felt like logically, like based on their relationship, the things they said to each other, I was like, oh my god, absolutely, I am here for this. And then when he died, or well, the first time you think he dies before Michael actually kills him, I was just like, I just spent an hour and 40 minutes investing in this idea.
Yeah.
And then it was like ripped out from under my feet. And I know I would have loved it. I also, and I don't know that they could have made this fit in this movie if they had gone in this direction. I also would have been totally cool with seeing Corey in the sewer with like 15 other people in Michael Myers mask. Like, let's do it. Like, let's just, you know what I mean? Like, I had such,
Winter the evil.
I'm like, let's just go crazy.
Yeah. Cult of Chucky
People, like,
situation. Out of,
yeah,
yeah.
Cult
Cult of Michael.
but with Michael Myers. Yeah, but I know, like, I would have loved for him to have
Yeah.
gone on and do, and it was funny because like, and this is, I think a lot of people have said this, but it was really cool getting to see the differences in the amateur and the one that's been doing it since the 70s, because you've got this like Michael is like, doesn't make a sound. He gets shot, doesn't say anything. Meanwhile, when Corey's hand gets slammed, he's like, "Oh my god!" He's like screaming
Yeah.
in uncontrollable pain. But no, I would have loved that. My preference would have been him and Allison becoming killers together and leaving.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah.
I think I like being able to see what we didn't see of Michael when he was 6 years old. I mean,
Yeah.
we got to see what it looks like to turn into the shape.
Yeah.
Because he did snap. I mean, like, 'cause,
Yes.
like, like once you get to like the garage scene and like he puts the mask on and he like becomes the shape, and then he starts going through
Yes.
his like tour from the garage to the radio tower to Laurie's house, right? That his little, killing spree there.
This is it. Yeah.
But then she shoots him and then he talks, but it's like, it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because I wonder, because I think, because Michael was silent ever since he was 6, right? Because I think of like Loomis, he didn't say a word for 15 years. Yeah. So he never, once he killed his sister, he never spoke.
He never spoke again.
So it was just interesting. I like seeing that. How did you feel about Lori in general? Because we haven't really touched on her specifically.
Yeah, so it's kind of sort of similar to how I feel about Allison. I felt like and again, I don't necessarily think this was unintentional, but she kind of took a back seat because we're so focused on like all these other things. So our first like really cool moment for me is like when Corey's being harassed at the gas station by this punk band kids.
Yeah, his bullies, I thought, was like, oh god. Kick him in the shins. What's happening? Yeah, He's
worst bullies I've ever seen in my life. Like, So anyway, when they're harassing him at the gas station, calling him all those names and like getting in his face and stuff, and she comes up and she tells them to like, piss off or whatever. And then she comes over to him and she does the knife thing and she's like, I'm like, this is yes, okay. But then there were so many moments in between when she's like really like emotional that I was just like, how though? Like I just had a hard time like, and I don't know, maybe that's because like I know she's been healing and she's been through all this and like she's lost her daughter now and like there's all these things and I get all of that.
Mhm.
But it's still, to me, it felt like that's not like the Lori that I was expecting to see. Like, so when she goes, for example, to go see Corey's mother, the mom from Carrie, when she goes to see her and she like says all that shit, I was like, oh, she's about to punch her, like right, she's gonna hit her and like this and lay her out or let her have it. And she was just like, okay. So like I was like, what is happening? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I had a hard time with it. And again, I get, and it's not because I don't understand. Like I understand, healing from trauma, moving on. Like I get all of that. And finally just letting yourself, like when your guard falls, that's when you like cry. That's when you lose your shit, because you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And I get that. But what I didn't get was her allowing herself to be vulnerable in front of these complete strangers that were horrible to her. Like that part was hard for me. Because we're so used to like badass Lori by this point, that she doesn't have to beat up everybody, but I just expected her to just be like, like how she was showing Corey, like you don't have to take their shit. But then she would take shit from anybody, like no matter who it was. I'm like, why?
Yeah, I think a big part of it was guilt too. I think there was like people were making her feel like it was her fault. It was her fault with Michael, and I think maybe that played into it. Like she almost felt like maybe she owed the town something.
Yeah, because it's such a big part. She's such a big part of it.
Yeah.
So when they do the opening with the not the opening, but when we come into the town and in the present day, in the present timeline, and it's showing all the bad stuff happening around the town. Did you notice who the woman hanging was? I didn't. I heard this from another podcast.
It was the mom of
the
kid's mom. I know.
How did you? I didn't even realize that's who that was.
Yeah, because I had recently rewatched Kills, and I remember, right before it, I watched 18 and Kills back to back, and there's that quick scene where she sees his body in the morgue. And she was wearing his costume. So, and because I remember that kind of like gutting me during Kills when she finds him in the hospital.
No, that part was awful. So I just didn't. Once it was pointed out to me that's who it was, I was like, oh, like I immediately, but I like missed that moment in the movie because I was like, oh, like somebody like hung themselves publicly, like that's awful. Like, of course it's awful, but I didn't realize the why until after the fact.
Yeah, there were a lot of those things I wish. Like I think we'll get an extended cut. And I always take the extended cut to be the true version, always, just because I feel like like they obviously the studios had a lot of meddling, and like that's why I'm like always like, Halloween 6 producer's cut. That's my cut. Like that in my head that's how that movie ends. But I'm hoping because it was we got to see Julian, the kid that was being babysat in the first one, and then obviously we found out that woman survived, the one that saw her husband get killed.
Light, that he took that light.
I'm trying to think of anyone else that people were saying it was weird that we didn't see Lindsay in the procession. That she wasn't, but I mean she was around, but
she was pretty useless though. Like it's like there really was like, I think just she survived, so we need to have her in it,
I guess they really would have been the point of Lindsay getting attacked again. I think they were trying to really kind of like drive home the like there is no rhyme or reason to what Michael was doing, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Like with Kills, it was literally him just getting from Laurie's house to his house, and that was his path, and that was it. There was whoever got in his way was that's who got the knife. You know what I mean? Like So there really is he doesn't plot, he doesn't plan, and then in ends, it was just him regaining power. Corey took his mask from him. He wanted his mask back. Corey was at Lori's house, so therefore he went to Lori's house.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like there really is no like, they just again, but that calls back to the conversation of fate versus free will in Halloween 78, right?
Mhm.
Like, are they tied by fate? Because all these little these little coincidences keep
They keep
happening.
happening.
Even though he's literally not planning to go after her. Like in the first one, they talk about, not the first one, in 18, Sartain put them together, the crazy doctor, which again, I thought that was a crazy weird twist, but I love that. I still think about that twist from
Yeah.
2018. Like I love the killer doctor.
Yeah.
Which is a callback to the doctor from the original timeline. Like I know you don't watch you don't watch the later ones too much, but he was the Man in Black in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he was the doctor in the first one talking to Loomis about how did he learn to drive, and then it turns out that he's the one that kidnapped Jamie and Michael and blah,
Yes.
blah, blah.
Yes.
So
And
like
18, it erases
two
like
on.
two on. So it's like
2 through,
one.
yeah. So it's literally just the first one and then 2018.
Yeah, because I know that like
Yeah.
when I think this is pretty common knowledge, but when the whole sibling thing was like this like last minute throw in
For 2.
for
Halloween
2, like that had never, like that wasn't a thing, and then all of a sudden, so I was just trying to remember because I know that that's not a part of it now, but then I was like I couldn't remember if that meant it was like not 2 at all, but yeah, so like nothing after 1 exists in this timeline.
There was a fun little Easter egg though, like they did make canon one scene from Halloween 2, and that was in Halloween Kills. They flash back to Sheriff Brackett finding his daughter Annie's body.
Yeah.
And that is in Halloween 2, and they used that clip. And I was like, oh, that was fun. So there's one little part of Halloween 2 that's canon.
Then in this one too, there's even moments from like the remake. So like the dance scene, the spazzing and like there was quite a, and then of course like when the little boy falls and he looks over the banister and he's got that knife in his hand, that's like a callback to there are so many things in this film that are from all the other ones.
I did like, however, Allison becoming a nurse.
Oh yeah,
I like that. That was almost like her way of dealing with some of the trauma. But she was like, all this crazy shit happened to my town 4 years ago. I'm gonna pick a career that helps people,
that can help. Yeah.
And not in a way that's just about trauma, but literally I'm going to help patch
physically be able to actually do something to help.
It's like a different kind of way, so
yeah,
I really
I
like
agree.
that
I like
aspect.
that.
And again, bringing a little bit of the pandemic into it. Like there's like these other layers of like, she becomes an essential worker. And I'm like, I kind of like that in a response to this trauma that affected the community. And I know people are going to listen to this and be like, not everything has to be about the pandemic, but
it
happened, and it's.
To your point, though, what is true is that there is something to be said about relatability, whether it's intentional or not.
Yeah.
That sense of adjusting to a new norm after bad things have happened. That's relatable as a viewer, whether you want to call it pandemic or not, whatever. If you want to if you don't see that, and that's fine. But the truth is that those things are there and they relate back to us as something relevant to our current lives, which makes things like that feel more real. Like we're a part of this. We know what that feels like. We and that's, and again, that's even if you're talking about people who are coming back or, overcoming war, coming back from like all of these like bad things that happen to people all the time. It's like that. I mean, it's there for a reason, because it makes that whole feeling of healing as this like group of people. It makes all of that more like relatable. Like I think it just makes you feel all the things they want you to feel, because even if you don't realize why you feel that way, you're feeling it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you
Absolutely.
can watch something and not even think, oh shit, like I didn't think about that. And now that you're saying it, I'm like, man, I was like, no, that totally that matches. I get it.
Yeah.
Trying
to think of any other like points. I mean, we touched on like the supernatural stuff, the characters, Corey, Allison, and Laurie.
What's your favorite kill?
Oh, my favorite kill. Okay, it's the one that like is kind of the torch. The torch. I'm like, that's so
Right?
different.
Oh my God.
Because you see it, but you don't see it, right? It's like the silhouette of the guy's face.
Of the outline of the face.
So
Yeah.
he almost kind of looks like a jack-o'-lantern. You know, I think that's
thought
what
the
they were
same
going
thing.
for.
Oh,
That was
God.
really cool.
Yeah, so all of Corey's kills were awesome. Like, I have no qualms about the
Yeah.
kills at all. They were fantastic. Save for the homeless guy, but that's like our introduction to the situation,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that doesn't really count. But because I also really loved when he killed the DJ.
Oh, the tongue. And I like that you heard it on the radio. Like, see, that's some of the comedy and horror that I think really works.
Really works, yes.
Like,
No,
'cause
I
think
concur.
that's funny and clever.
And did you? I'm sure you did, but you noticed the cameo from Darcy, the male girl.
Darcy? Yeah. I explained
cool.
because I made my husband watch it. And I was like, "That's Darcy. She's from this." And blah, 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 blah. And I'd explain who she was, but
Yeah.
she's not a horror person
Yeah.
at all. So I'm like, she's in the horror community, and she does this, this, and that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that.
That was cool to see her.
Well, this is why I think we're gonna get an extended cut because she tweeted that her full death scene was cut.
Oh yeah, because we just get like a.
Yeah, so she gets a full death scene, which I'm assuming we'll get in the release. There's 2 shots from the trailer. Was that?
That's a bummer.
It is a bummer. A lot was cut from this movie. I
Yeah.
think.
Well, there's
because,
a lot going on. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So I hope we get an extended cut, even if it's just for fun, just to see some of these other kills fleshed out. Because it's her. There's more with him killing the mom.
Good.
Because that was like a
Quick.
Well,
it was like a very quick nod to one, right? The mask coming up at the sister, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
That mom. Why am I drawing a blank? What's the mom's name from Carrie?
Margaret.
Margaret. Very Margaret character.
Margaret Weiss, very over the top, protective mom.
Oh my God, the custard thing, like.
Oh no, custard. And then also, did she like kiss him on the lips too? I was like, oh, this is uncomfortable.
What is happening? Well, and it just kind of is like those things of like, like we always go to like when people become serial killers, we're always like, oh, well, what was their like relationship with their parents like? It's like
there you go.
Yeah.
But I love that the dad was like, I hope you find love.
Is his stepdad.
The stepdad, yeah, the one that works with
because he's like, God, this
one. Because there's a scene, there's a behind the scenes clip. I'm gonna see if you could see it. There's like a pillow between them. Like there's supposed to be more to the kill.
Oh.
So she like lifts a pillow and he tears it and there's like feathers coming out. There's supposed to be so much more. Like, and then there's also a scene in the trailer where like Allison sees Michael or Corey. I don't know which one. The thing opens and you see the shape and she screams. And like that's not in the movie. So like there's like stuff from the movie or from the trailers and behind the scenes stuff that's
because
it was cut.
They cut stuff after they make trailers. That happens a lot, especially with timing and
So I'm hoping.
You've got to be right. There's no way because with everything that went on with, and then you have to wonder, like to what you were mentioning earlier, is like how much better is it going to make the movie?
Yeah. Especially if we get nods to like Loomis and stuff, like I was saying with the novelization, right? Because there literally is like there's so many breakdown videos I've been seeing on YouTube of people who've read it already, and like they're like, here are all the differences, and here's all this like extra stuff.
That's really cool. Yeah.
So I'm hoping we get kind of like a nice, at least an extra 10-15 minutes to the movie would be nice.
Yeah, get some of that stuff we felt like might have been a little robbed of. So yeah, that's our thoughts on Halloween ends. I keep wanting to say kills. Ends. Halloween ends.
Because you love kills so much. That's why.
Yeah, I think you've made a lot of really good points. I think the longer I think I kind of am on the train of like everyone's saying things like, oh, in like 5 years, everyone's gonna be like really thinking about this movie and talking about it as like this thing of like how great it was. And I think there's probably some truth to that. I think the longer people sit on this, the more people rewatch it. When people go back and they revisit old ones and they come back, like I did with Season of the Witch, I think the appreciation for it is going to grow. I really do think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's just the power of this franchise too, because
Yeah.
you know, you don't really get this kind of conversation with like a lot of streaming movies or TV series. They're big for the week they come out, and then no one like talks about it. Like
They
I
die
love,
out.
I enjoy Stranger Things, but you know what? Once the season is done and the week is over, no
Mm-hmm.
one's really talking about it. Meanwhile, this movie was out. What? It's been 2 weeks. 1 week. I don't even know how
2
long.
weeks.
2 weeks. I feel like the conversation is just as strong now as it was that first weekend.
People are still just like,
Yeah, going
yeah.
on. So, you know, it's interesting. But thank you for having me on to talk
Oh
about
my
it.
God.
I had a
Anytime.
blast.
This was so much fun. Yeah. I'm glad you were able to make it. Yeah, we'll do something again soon. It was we both like our lives just like,
New houses, new babies, new
new
like
everything, new
everything.
jobs.
It's great. Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah, so life's just been really crazy. So I'm no, this was awesome. I'm glad we got to do it for sure.
Yeah.
So I will put all of Steve's information in the description for this episode as always. And yeah, that's all we have. So hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a great week coming up, and I'll see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.